The impact of the coronavirus pandemic, Part 2. The housing market crash we avoided. It is indeed common knowledge that the COVID-19 pandemic has greatly impacted the world's economy as well as the US economy. Everyone and everything was impacted, amongst which was the real estate sector. As aforementioned, here in the US, the housing market wasn't spared from the woes of COVID. The real estate sector experienced massive shockwaves and almost immediate downward pressure to the industry's bottom line as a whole, which resulted in a flash crash of sorts, which we have been lucky to avoid. So, how did it happen? In the beginning period of the pandemic, people could no longer socialize, work, eat, or shop as they did prior. The working world rapidly moved from working in an office to working from home as mandated by law. Retail stores, for the most part, had to shut down their doors or limit patronage to essential business activity only. Consumers were allowed to spend solely on medicine, food, and home supplies. Malls and places of gathering like schools and churches had to shut down their doors as well. This was indeed the beginning to the end, because at that point, the commercial real estate sector began to show signs of despair. The residential real estate sector was no better either. In the early days of the pandemic, residential real estate companies all over the US experienced an unprecedented and sharp decline in home listings and sales nationwide as fear of contracting the virus, coupled with market uncertainties, became the point of convergence of the marketplace. Buyers weren't buying out of fear of the unknown. Translation: nobody wanted to buy in at what seemed to be the very top of the market. And sellers, on the other hand, were eager to sell, trying to get out as quickly as possible out of fear of being unable to get as much as they can from their property had they chosen to wait this out. States like New Jersey and Massachusetts were hit the hardest, mostly because of their dense population and large industrial base. The great state of New Jersey saw a 62% decrease in commercial real estate valuation. That's anywhere from lease price of all commercial properties listed on the MLS to the cost of acquisition. The great state of Massachusetts experienced fairly similar numbers, but given its density, it has yet to go back to pre-pandemic levels. To sum it up, supply was fast outpacing demand. This was quite a nightmare in the making. For a very brief second, it felt like it was going to be 2008 all over again. But something strange happened mid-pandemic, and the crash was somehow avoided. But how? Towards the end of December 2020, the United States Congress signed into law in a bipartisan effort the single biggest economic relief package ever created in American history. Over $2.3 trillion of funding came about to juice up our economy. The spending primarily included $300 billion in one-time cash payments to individual people who submit a tax return in America, with most single adults receiving $1,200 and families with children receiving more. $260 billion in increased unemployment benefits, the creation of the Paycheck Protection Program that provides forgivable loans to small businesses with an initial $350 billion in funding, later increased to $669 billion by subsequent legislation, $500 billion in loans for corporations, and $339.8 billion to state and local agencies. Thanks to the stimulus money, the good old US of A became liquid again. And at that very point, a massive turnaround occurred in the economy. New Jersey property owners were rewarded with a 33% increase in valuation, mostly fueled by the demand for the mass exodus from its neighboring state, New York. The state of Vermont saw a 16% rise in the median home prices throughout 2020 and a 32% rise in 2021. The state of Hawaii saw a 62% increase in property value thanks to the massive flow of domestic tourism throughout the pandemic. People with cold, hard stimulus cash flooded the island, including many wealthy individuals who were tired of the continuous lockdowns. The island is now home to several billionaires, from tech mogul Mark Zuckerberg, the founder of Facebook, to the founder of Oracle, Larry Ellison, who reportedly purchased 98% of the Hawaiian island of Lanai for a reported $300 million. So business has been booming in Hawaii. The state of Florida has also seen a sharp increase in population, thanks in part to the aforementioned exodus of millions of people out of states like New York and California. Homeowners impacted by the pandemic also received relief in the form of forbearance. Simply put, Forbearance is when your mortgage servicer or lender allows you to temporarily pay your mortgage at a lower payment or pause paying your mortgage. These payments can sometimes be moved towards the tail end of the scheduled mortgage payments. Despite Congress's effort to help the economy, not everybody was pleased with the intervention. Many critics on the right have come out full swing criticizing Congress for its role in what is perceived to be an economic faux pas during the pandemic. In an off-camera interview, a Florida-based Republican voter, who is also a social advocate, told us the following.
The median rent in the U.S. is only about $1,200 a month, while the median home price is about $350,000, not including taxes. The average worker would have to work for 16 months just to afford a down payment on a home, compared to the 70s and 80s, where one income could take care of an entire family. In cities like LA or New York, the average Joe would find it virtually impossible to afford a mortgage. As a result, most people rent, and I firmly believe that the stimulus package is to blame in part.
Most Democrats, however, seem to be in favor of government intervention in the economy. We will address that in a future episode. Whichever side of the aisle you are on, one thing remains certain: we can all agree to disagree.